Hello, and welcome to this episode of Health Matters, a program brought to you by the Farmington Valley Health District. My name is Jennifer Curtanis, Health Director, and your host for this episode. Unfortunately, it seems like the busier we get, the more difficult it is to incorporate physical activity into our daily lives. This is having very serious and negative consequences for our health. 62% of adults are considered either overweight or obese. 42% of our children are considered either overweight or obese. These are staggering statistics. Overweight and obesity are linked to heart disease, diabetes, some cancers, joint issues, and may even adversely impact our mental health. In public health, we know that physical activity is one of the most important things that you can do for good health. We also know that making the healthy choice, the easy choice, will increase the likelihood of people getting and staying active. Today, we are very pleased to have with us Patty Jacobus and Debbie Thibodeau. They represent the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee for Simsbury and also Simsbury Free Bike. And they're here today to talk to us about the work being done to really promote biking and walking in the Farmington Valley and the communities that we live. So thank you for being here, and welcome to you both. We are really quite fortunate in the Farmington Valley to have access to incredible biking and walking paths and facilities. Can you tell us a little bit more about the network of trails in our region?
Sure. The Farmington Canal Heritage Trail is probably the one that people know best, and it actually goes currently from New Haven, Connecticut, all the way up to Westfield, Mass. Big biking and walking trail. Attracts people from all over. It's really quite a magnet for the towns that are close by. The other trail is called the Farmington River Trail, and that is sort of an ancillary trail, but lovely. It goes through Burlington and Canton, Collinsville, and back into Simsbury. It does a big loop, about a 17-mile loop. And just a beautiful place to walk or ride, walking all year long, and then riding certainly in riding season.
Yeah, so a lot of people might hear, oh my gosh, New Haven all the way up to, where did you,
Westfield, Mass,
Westfield,
right?
Mass. Might say, oh my gosh, you know, that's not for me. I want to get out and ride, you know, a couple miles.
Sure.
But you really can take advantage of segments of the trail. It's not just for people that, you know, really do aggressive and well, a lot of riding.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, all those towns along the trail, everybody has their favorite little segment to either walk or ride.
Right, that's wonderful. So obviously the establishment of these trails, the maintenance of these trails, the promotion of these trails isn't something that, you know, just happens. And I know the two of you have really been incredibly dedicated to, you know, supporting the trail system and through the organizations that you're involved with. Can you tell us a little bit about the two organizations that you're involved with and some of the work that you do to really promote biking and cycling in our communities?
I'll talk about Simsbury Free Bike, and maybe Deb can talk about our advisory committee.
Yeah.
Simsbury Free Bike is a regional bike share. We have a fleet of about 60 bikes in 5 or 6 towns, including Cheshire and New Britain, so it expands beyond, because the concept works in a lot of places, not just here in the valley. But essentially we have a group of volunteers, a fleet of bikes, some wonderful businesses that offer their locations for the bikes, and people can come and borrow a helmet and a bike and go off and enjoy the trails for the day at no cost.
And as the health department, I'm excited to hear that you said it comes with a helmet and a bike, because you see, you know, these free bike opportunities or rental bike opportunities popping up across the country, which is phenomenal, but not always with the helmet.
Right.
So we're always encouraging the helmet.
And not always free.
And not always free. Right.
So.
And so, can you tell us, if people were interested in learning a little bit more, say they're having family in or they don't own a bike and they just want to take advantage of it, where they would learn more?
Well, the best bike is one you don't have to take care of yourself. So you can go online, you can go to Facebook, Simsbury Free Bike, and a list of all of our locations are there.
Great.
And the hours of operation are in sync with the hours that the business is open. So you can come and borrow a bike. You do have to be 18 or older to borrow the bike. But it's a great way to see the trails, and if you go to different locations, you get to see different parts of the trail.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so, Debbie, you've also been involved in the Cycling Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that that organization does?
Okay. That organization is a collaboration between town officials and volunteer advocates and businesses in town, and basically we come together to try and address lots of different issues. So the trail system would be sort of the infrastructure, but we also consider the importance of education surrounding bike safety and motorists driving safely around cyclists, encouraging cycling and walking with events that we hold. We work with the police department as well as a partner, and they're a great resource in terms of safety. So it's really a collaborative effort.
So I know in the past we've been involved in supporting your bike to work activities as an example, or biking and walking to school. I mean, when we grew up in neighborhoods where there was a neighborhood school, and walking and biking was the norm, but that's really not the case, unfortunately, anymore. But we are still trying to encourage where it is feasible and makes sense. Can you tell us a little bit about some of that work? Because I know I've just really enjoyed seeing the smiles on the kids' faces when they show up at school on their bikes.
The kids love it. Basically, in suburban and rural communities, many of the kids are bused, and so the actual percentage of students who are in a walkable, bikeable distance from their school is going to be limited. But sometimes the number of kids that could bike to school is higher than the number that are assigned to walk or bike, because you can bike further than a normal walking distance. And as long as they have a safe route, we want to encourage families to recognize that going from A to B by bike is a healthy and it's good for green, good for the environment way to actually to travel.
Right.
And so we create these events to encourage many of the kids to walk and bike to school. If they live too far out, then they can meet up with other children in other neighborhoods that are closer to the school. And essentially what you get is like hundreds of kids on bikes with their parents too. And the neat thing about these events is when you target the kids, but you're pulling in the parents, you're actually introducing a whole family into the concept of using their bike or their feet for transportation.
Right. I think it's wonderful. I know it's been fun to be part of that, and also the bike to work related activities as well. Often people commute fair distance, and maybe a car is a necessity of their work, but there are any number of people that probably work and live within a reasonable distance, or can get to a commuter lot maybe that allows them to travel the rest of the trip on a bike. So you've sponsored that type of activity, I think the committee has, for a number of years.
Right. So, we'll set up on the rail trail. I know they're having an event in Farmington this month as well.
Right.
But just to sort of welcome people and primarily to plant the seed for people who haven't tried it yet to, try it. And here with the weather that we have, winters, et cetera, we're not asking people to bike every single day, but to think about the days in their schedule that maybe they could, maybe they don't have to pick up kids after work or whatever, and if they have access to one of these trails that we talked about, you can actually travel quite a distance and in a safe environment.
Right. Yeah, no, it's wonderful to have that accessibility. So I know some of the towns in the Farmington Valley have received kind of special recognition nationally for being bike friendly. Can you tell us a little bit about the Simsbury designation and what that means and some of the work that goes into that?
Sure. The League of American Bicyclists is the organization that basically evaluates a town in terms of how well it's doing, in terms of meeting the needs of a community when it comes to safety and education and whatnot. There are actually 5 criteria. See if I get them all, Deb. How much you encourage people to bike, which would be our events. Education, that means educating motorists, educating students and walkers, all the laws that are associated with it. Engineering, your infrastructure. How has your infrastructure evolved to be more of a a better connected community, a safer community with maybe dedicated bike lanes, more up-to-date pedestrian crosswalks, so they do an evaluation of engineering. Your police department is a big part of that because how they enforce the laws is a big part of how they evaluate you. And then the last E is, I think I missed one.
Evaluation.
Evaluation, which is how well do you think you're doing? And then we have to supply a pretty involved questionnaire back to the League of American Bicyclists, and they come back to you with a recommendation. Now, fortunately, and we're very proud of this, Simsbury was the very first bicycle-friendly community in the state of Connecticut, and then 4 years later, we had to reapply. We then became the first silver designation. It goes all the way up to platinum. There's like 4 or 5 steps in there. But you have to up your game every year, and the criteria gets harder and harder every year as new research comes out, there's new techniques for your infrastructure. The work that we've been doing in the schools and a lot of other cities around the state and the country, on-bike education in the schools is probably your best bang for the buck because you're getting, as Deb said, the whole family.
Right.
Everybody has buy-in, and the PE teachers in Simsbury have done just an amazing job of train-the-trainer programs, on-bike education and PE, and we have to give a shout out to South Windsor. They started the program here in Connecticut. They have continued upping the game at their end, and they've been teaching a lot of other teachers around the state. So we have a very aggressive bike education program in the schools. So it's a commitment from the standpoint of volunteers and advocates and the town. But you also learned a lot about what else you can do to make your town safer. So Farmington has been recognized.
Yes, and I know, I mean, Simsbury was kind of the leader in this, and now what's happened is you've kind of, I think, encouraged and demonstrated for other towns, both within the Farmington Valley and throughout the state,
of
that they really, you know, you can do this.
And it's not just suburban. I mean, it really started with urban centers. And we now share silver designation. We have one other city in the state, New Haven, has done a wonderful job with their advocates and infrastructure, and they were designated as a silver this year as well. So now we have 2 silver communities in Connecticut.
That's wonderful. So I know we often talk in the health arena about the benefits of being physically active, and cycling certainly is probably one of the best examples of a healthy, wonderful way to get exercise in a fun way. But what are some of the other benefits of increasing access to bike paths throughout our communities?
Well, one of the things that we were talking about as we were driving over here was making sure that we talked about the importance of connectivity. It's great to have a bike path, and any town that has a bike path in town is really fortunate, but then how do people get there safely? You have all these neighborhoods in town, and they have to load the kids and the bikes in the car. As you start thinking about your arterial roads and some of the major connectors, how can we make them safer so that a family feels comfortable hopping on a bike right out of their driveway and finding their way to the trail? So connectivity is a big piece of it as well.
Yeah. So I know sometimes I travel some of the back roads, and this might not be necessarily the area where families choose to ride, but others that are more experienced do. And I noticed that there are, these big painted bikes on the roads and that sort of thing. So describe how you're working to kind of build that infrastructure.
Well, you have to start out with both drivers and cyclists knowing what the rules of the road are. So there are many situations where cyclists don't want to be on a bike path. It may not take them where they want to go, so they're going to be on those roads. And the sharrows are the symbols that indicate that it is a shared lane. You can expect to see cyclists on the road in your lane if you are driving. And in the state of Connecticut, it is legal for cyclists to be in the lane. So if you encounter a cyclist in your lane, then you need to slow down and wait until it's safe to pass, and you may pass the cyclist even by crossing a yellow line. So in thinking about our communities, there's no way we can put in bike lanes in every single, we just don't have that kind of money. And it would be amazing if we did, but we don't. So with the infrastructure that we currently have, particularly the rural roads, then it is really important to have that educated driving community and educated cyclists, so they know what they're doing out there and know how to safely share that space. If you do the kind of analysis Patty was talking about, looking at the routes that would be important to get to maybe workplaces, get to schools, to reach a bike path, which corridors can you pick out and prioritize to improve the infrastructure, maybe make the lanes a little bit wider to give cyclists more space.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that we have a resource in the bike advisory committee to be thinking forward about those things, right? Because, we always have road construction or something that needs to be tweaked or modified. And if we can proactively identify those things, then maybe it's not an additional cost or a slightly increased cost, but can really build that biking infrastructure. I know the Sharrows really alert me. You drive, you're not paying attention. Just that Sharrow is a reminder to be paying attention. I think you brought a yellow sign, which really is a reminder of the 3 feet distance when you pass, to really slow down. And certainly, and I was admiring Patty's hot pink, just anything cyclists can do to
high visibility clothing.
High visibility clothing,
helmets.
reflective helmets.
Lights.
And yes, and certainly now it seems like it is commonplace to see the lights, the blinking lights, day in, dusk and dawn. We didn't have those. I mean, we might have had the little, well, the little orange reflector that you attach to the back of your seat. But, we've come a long way, I think, in terms of, understanding the safety and people doing what is appropriate, whether you're a cyclist or a driver, to keep everybody safe. So that's wonderful. As the health department, obviously I mentioned in the opening statement the concern about inactivity and the growing proportion of people that just don't get out and get exercise. But I know for some, a bike path, or maybe for people that haven't ridden a bike in a long time, it might be a little bit intimidating, right? And I think I recall there were some fun things that Simsbury Free Bike and the advisory committee were promoting, maybe for women that were just getting back into riding bikes, that sort of thing. What are some of the things that both guidance or food for thought that you might share with people that just want to get back into and explore it, and or what are some of the things that you're doing to encourage newbies or those
I want to get back on the bike.
I want to get back on the bike kind of a thing.
Bike advocates, I think, are a breed of people who really want to share the wonders of biking. And so with our bike community, the advocates in Simsbury and our organizations, Farmington has, Bike Friendly Farmington is their organization. If anyone reached out to those organizations and said, gee, I haven't been on a bike in a really long time and I have some questions, I'm sure they could link up with someone in those organizations. And I know myself, I've taken people out biking. So, we want to make this sport available to everyone.
And there's also meetup groups.
There's lots of
a lot
clubs.
of meetup groups.
There are many clubs and organizations of all different levels. So there's high-level cyclists, but there's also a group called Casual Cyclists. And, they're 10 miles an hour at the most, which is a fairly casual, speed for biking. And so there are opportunities to kind of link up with people that will, match where you are. And the local bike shops are also a great resource.
Yeah, Simsbury Free Bike. Just go and grab a bike for a couple hours and see how you like it. And
without the investment.
You can
try it.
And there are so many bikes out there, styles of bikes. I know that can be intimidating to people.
Yeah, sure.
So even like renting a bike from a bike shop, there's hybrids, there's the road bikes, there's trikes. I mean, one of the things that's unique to Simsbury is that we have this slogan, everybody rides, because we have a bike shop and a bike manufacturer in town that actually create titanium framed trikes, and we have a lot of people that have mobility issues, whether it's Parkinson's, TBI, veterans. They have a new life after these bikes. So there is a bike for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great message, and that they're accessible. I know, having the bike paths makes it a lot easier to get places in a different way. I know my husband and I love on a Saturday to ride our bikes into Simsbury to have breakfast, as an example. What can businesses do along the bike path to really make it a place, a destination, or a place where cyclists are comfortable coming on their bike to take advantage of, whether it's doing errands, grabbing a cup of coffee, having a meal, you name it? Are there things that we recommend?
Well, having a safe place to put your bike. I mean, not everybody's bike is one that you had from the last 15 years. Some of these people have some pretty expensive bikes. They want a safe place to lock up their bike. So a good bike rack in front of your business, maybe familiarity with the trail. There are so many people that come into the valley not knowing anything about the towns. They don't know where to go to get coffee. They don't know where to go to get lunch. They don't know which end of the trail they should be on. If you know a little bit about the trail, be able to help people coming into town.
Yeah.
So that's...
And those local businesses might want to work with their town on signage, wayfaring signage to help people on the trail get to their business.
Right.
And all the zoning laws are different in each town, but oftentimes that really has to be, coordinated with a town. A business may not really be able to put a sign right on the trail, but will the town support that kind of effort so that it's really good for economic development for the town,
Right.
And all those and the tourists coming through, as well as the businesses.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice collaboration between, volunteers and residents and chambers and businesses, as well as, government, municipal government.
The businesses
working
should know
collaboratively.
that 70% of the people that come to a location to borrow a free bike are from outside of that town. So those are all new people that our trails are attracting to town to make use of those businesses.
Yeah, wow, that's wonderful. So that for people that are interested in learning more about the bike paths, where can they go to get information, maps, where to park, that sort of distances, that sort of thing?
We have a website, which is www.simsbury.bike.
Okay.
And we have lots of information on our website about upcoming events. We have maps. Farmington Valley Trails Council has a great map of those two trails that we mentioned. Simsbury Free Bike is on Facebook.
And all the events that are coming up, they're all on Facebook. If you have a question about anything, just shoot us up a message on Messenger on Facebook, and we're happy to help out.
Great. And so we always run out of time during this, but I wanted to just end with a question. If people really were interested in supporting the work that's being done in their communities, what are some specific things that you could suggest to them to kind of get involved and support this work?
Volunteers. I mean, we need volunteer mechanics to help with the fleet. We need people involved in our schools. We need people on advisory committees. We need people on our local town commissions that can help with a lot of these things like wayfaring signage and grants for new trails.
Great. Well, and I'm sure whether they live in Simsbury or some of the towns that do have organized bike and pedestrian committees, they could get some support from you so they can carry that message.
Or if their
back.
town doesn't have one, call us, we'll help you start one.
Exactly. That is what I was trying to suggest. That's wonderful. So as we enter the spring and summer months, it's an excellent time to make the commitment to your health and that of your family and friends. Incorporating more physical activity into your daily routines is really an important aspect of staying healthy. Try something new. Take advantage of the amazing network of walking and bike paths that we have throughout the Farmington Valley. And to learn more, we really encourage you to go to Simsbury.bike, where you can find maps, lists of events, ways in which you can get involved. And if you don't own a bike, please take advantage of Simsbury Free Bike, and maybe that'll be the motivation you need to get back into the swing of things. I'd like to thank you both very much for being here and sharing your passion for cycling. And until next time, remember, your health is your greatest wealth.